The deadbeat dad. People hear the term deadbeat dad and usually think about unpaid child support. For me, it was never about the money. The money would have helped. God knows raising children alone isn't cheap. But the real debt was always paid somewhere else. In missed birthdays, empty seats at school events, broken promises, disappointment, and the question children ask themselves when someone who is supposed to love them simply doesn't show up. My eldest son grew up with a father shaped hole in his life, not because his father died, not because he's lived interstate, not because circumstances got in the way, because he chose not to be there. People often talk about the absent fathers as though they simply weren't around. But absence has a ripple effect. It shows up everywhere. It shows up in the questions children ask, the anger they carry, the hurt they don't know what to do with, the choices they make, the people they become, and sometimes it shows up in ways no parent ever wants to experience. Phone calls from police, court dates, trouble. Watching your child carry pain that was never theirs to carry, trying to help them make sense of a world that stopped making sense a long time ago. Then there were the letters, the prison letters. Not because I was taking my son to visit him, I wasn't. But prison has a way of finding its way into your life anyway. The letters would arrive full of promises, full of explanations, full of plans. Looking back, they read a bit like an Eminem song. Every page had a new villain, a new excuse, a new reason why none of it was really his fault. Everything was going to change. Everything was going to be different. This time he understood. This time he had learned. This time he was ready to be a father. The problem was that children don't grow up on promises. They grow up on consistency, and consistency never arrived. The thing people don't understand is that the damage isn't always in the absence. Sometimes it's in the hope that maybe this time they'll mean it, the hope that maybe this time things will change, the hope that gets handed to a child over and over again only to be ripped away. People talk about fatherlessness as though it's a single event. It isn't. It's death by 1,000 disappointments. And then there are people who somehow think they're helping. The ones who approach my son and casually announce, I spoke to your dad the other day, saw your dad around. Your dad asked about you. As though this is some wonderful piece of information, as though it's something he should be grateful for, as though simply existing somewhere in the world is some sort of parenting achievement. Every time I hear it, I wonder what response they're expecting. Because before you tell a child you spoke to their father, maybe stop and ask yourself why. What exactly is the purpose? Are you talking about the man who abused a woman while she was pregnant? The man who dragged her down the stairs? The man who held a cushion over her face and told her she was going to die tonight? The man who flipped her while pregnant and put her in hospital? The man who left carpet burns across her face? The man who has never worked a single day to support the child you're speaking to? The man who contributed nothing financially, emotionally, or practically to raising him? Because that's who you're talking about. Not some local celebrity, not some misunderstood victim, not some bloke who deserves applause because you happen to run into him at the shops. My son doesn't need updates. He doesn't need sightings. He doesn't need secondhand conversations delivered like breaking news. What he needed was a father. And those two things are very different. The hardest part is knowing that no matter how much love I gave him, no matter how hard I fought, no matter how many nights I stayed awake worrying, I could never completely fill the space left by someone who chose not to. That's the thing about deadbeat dads. The debt isn't financial. The debt is paid by the children who spend years carrying wounds they never asked for. My son deserved consistency. He deserved safety. He deserved a father who showed up. Instead, he got lessons in abandonment, and I got a front row seat to the damage it causes. People often ask how boys end up carrying so much hurt. Sometimes the answer isn't complicated. Sometimes the wound is exactly where it appears to be, a father shaped hole, and a child who spent years trying to understand why the man who helped create him never thought he was worth staying for.